Hi, this is Steven Aniston from Vixcontango, and we're going to go over what is included in the Vixcontango Plus subscription. The very first thing you get on the top is a volatility indicator sticker bar right here. In the sticker bar, you get to see the main volatility indicators, the Vixcontango oscillator, the VIX terminal oscillator, the V delta, rho yield, contango, contango rho, V ratio, V force, the VIX ATR, volatility risk premium, and the S&P 500 put call ratio. In addition to that, you get to see the S&P 500, the SPX, the short volatility ETN, the XAV, the long volatility ETN, the VXX, and some CBOE VIX volatility indices such as the VXXT, 1 week expected volatility, the VIX, 1 month expected volatility, the VX1, the front month VIX future, VX2, the second month VIX future, the VXV, the 3 month expected volatility, and the VVIX, the VIX volatility index. And finally, this is the number of trading days left to expiration, which in this case is 5. You can roll over each of the indicators to see a description and the formula. So, for example, the rho yield is the premium over of the front month VIX future over the VIX. The contango is the premium of the second month VIX future over the front month VIX future, etc. If you roll over the actual number, you get to see when it was updated. And at this point, at 1 o'clock 1740. All of the values get updated every 10 seconds. The data is with a 15-minute delay, but they get updated every 10 seconds throughout the day, throughout the trading day. The second part, in the Vixcontango Plus subscription, there are a few live dashboards that are included. The very first one is the VIX futures curve dashboard that displays a chart of the VIX futures curve. In this chart, you get to see the distribution of all the VIX futures in blue. In gray is the curve as of the prior day close. And then with the horizontal lines, you get to see the spot VIX indices. So the VIX is the red line, the VXST is the dashed red line. You can also turn on to see the VXV in a yellow line. It's very close to the VIX line here. And the VXLT, the 6-month expected volatility index, again with a yellow line. You can also select to see the contango. This is the difference between the VX1 and the VX2 futures. And you can turn off any of those lines. You can turn off the VIX futures if you want. You can turn off the prior close line. You have some flexibility with that. Then you also get to see the volatility curve chart. This combines the spot VIX indices with the VIX futures. The spot VIX indices are with red dots, and this is what the volatility curve looks like right now. On the right-hand side, you get to see some information very similar to the one you see on the top ticker bar. You get to see the SPX, the XAV, and the VXX, what the last value is and what the percentage change is as, for today. You get to see the expected volatility indices, the VXST, the VIX, VXV, VXMT, VVIX, the point change today and the percentage change today. Then you get to see the VIX futures from VX1 to VX8. You get to see the contracts and when it expires. The next section here is historical volatility. This is historical volatility of the SPX. You get to see the 1 week actual, HV5, HV10 the 2 week, HV20 the 1 month actual, HV60 the 3 month, and HV120 the 6 month. Then you get to see a whole section of volatility analytics, which is very similar to the one on the ticker bar on top, but it has some additional information such as the contango tool, which is the difference between the second month and third month futures. or the premium of the second month, of the third month over the second month future. You get to see the VHV, the historical volatility of the VIX, and the historical average VIX, which at this point is 1984. You also get to see some metrics about the XAV, such as the weight of the futures inside of the XAV. So W1 is the front future weight, and W2 is the back future weight. TD is trading days to expiration, which is 5 trading days, and the VX1T is the length of the VX1 term, of the front month term, which is 19 days. And you also get to see how much of the XAV is due to contango today, and how much is it due to the move in the futures. So XAV gain from contango and XAV gain from futures. The next dashboard, live dashboard that you see that you have in the Vixcontango Plus subscription is the volatility monitor. This screen updates every 15 seconds, every 30 seconds, and it gives you the intraday moves in the S&P 500, the XAV, the VXX, the spot indices VXXT, VIX, and the volatility against the VVIX, and then it also has some other volatility indices such as the GVZ, the Gold Volatility Index, OVX, the Oil Volatility Index, and the TIVIX, the Treasury Volatility Index. The next dashboard is the volatility signals dashboard. This contains 20-day charts of the main volatility indicators. So first we get to see the VXST and the VIX. The VXST is the red line, the VIX is the blue line. You get to see the volatility curve, a small portion of the volatility curve, and a little nugget of information here that shows you what was displayed on a volatility curve. So the VXXT, the VIX, VXV, VXMT, and the VX1 to VX5 futures. You also have a chart of the VVIX evolution over the past 20 days here. The V-force, the VIX terminal oscillator. You get to see the VCO, the contango, the V ratio, the V delta, rho yield, VATR, the put-call ratio with PCR of the S&P 500, the VIX historical volatility, and the volatility risk premium. In the second tab of the volatility signals dashboard, you have a dashboard about the S&P 500. This gives you, the latest value, how many points were added or lost today, the percentage loss, and what was the prior close. You get to see the year-to-date performance and the one-year performance of the SPX, and the drawdown from the all-time high and how long it has been. What was the value, the highest closing value, and at what date it happened. You also get to see a little nugget here that shows you the daily 80% range. So for this day of this month, we calculate what the 10th and 19th percentile of all the returns are. So in this case, the 10th percentile is minus 0.47%, and the plus percentile is 0.18%. 0.91%, and the midpoint, the average return. And based on that, we calculate what the 80% range for the SPX should be today. So 1871, 1883, and 1897. So in this case, we're trading far below the 10%, the 10 percentile. Here also we get to see a brief snapshot of the operating earnings of the S&P 500, 104, and the operating PE, as well as the GAAP earnings, the generally accepted accounting principle earnings, and the GAAP PE. In addition to that, we have a little chart here of the SPX in which you get to see all the drawdown levels from the peak. So we have 1% drawdown, 3%, 5, 7, 10, 15, and 20% drawdown. The yellow line is the SPX, and we also have the main moving averages, the 200-day moving average in a dark blue line, and the 50-day moving average in a light blue line. The next dashboard in the volatility signals focusing on the XIV. In this again, you get to see the XIV, the how much it lost today, the percentage loss, the prior close. This is a calculated ATR stop and the stop loss percentage. We get to see the year-to-date performance of the XIV, the one-year performance, the drawdown from all-time high, how long has it been in this drawdown, the peak value of 49.68 on June 23rd. In this section here, you get to see the 8% range. Again, for this day in this month, we get all the returns of the XAV, and we calculate the 10th percentile, the 90th percentile, and the average. Here we also have another section about the fund composition. So what's inside the XIV? It's composed of VX1 futures, 26%, and VX2 futures, 74%. And this shows you how much these futures are up or down today. This section here calculates the daily gain, how much it comes, how much of the daily gain of XIV comes from Contango, and how much it comes from the move in the VIX futures. And then here we have the expiration date, how many calendar days we have to expiration, in this case 8, and how many trading days we have to expiration, in this case 5, which matches the number up here on the volatility ticker bar. In addition to that, we have a chart of the XIV where we display all the drawdown levels from the all-time peak. You know, we have 10%, 20%, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%. The yellow line is the XIV line, the blue line is the 30-day moving average, and the gray line is the stop loss, the ATR stop level as we calculated. So the number that gets displayed up here. For each of the days in the past, you get to see that displayed in a gray line down here. So far, we've covered the main live dashboards, the VIX futures curve dashboard, the volatility monitor, and the volatility signals. Next, we're going to discuss the daily reports. The first daily report is the volatility analytics. This is our biggest report. And on the top here, we have a summary section of where things closed in the last trading day. So we have a section here covering the SPY, the TOT, the JUDY, the XAV, and the VXX. We also have a section where we show the when was what the max SPY value was, the max XAV value was, at what date it was achieved, how big is the drawdown, and how many days it has been since there's been a drawdown. We also cover the latest Vixcontango oscillator signal, when it was triggered, and the latest VIX term roll oscillator signal and when it was triggered. In this section here, we cover the VIX spot indexes. This is the VXST, the VIX, the VVIX. This is the value, and in the gray box here is the percentile of all time value. So in this case, 86% of the time the VX60 has been lower than this level here of 22. And then this is the percentage change. So for each value we have the percentile and also the percentage change. Then we have a section here that covers the front month future, the back month future, the VXV, the HV10, and the VHV, as well as the how big or how much time is left in the terms. T1 is the a front month term, and then T2 is the back month term. So as of last Friday, there were 11 days left. This section here covers the main volatility analytics, VCO, V3O, V delta, Contango, Rho yield, Contango Rho, V ratio, V force, volatility risk premium, VRP, PCR, and VATR. In the gray box here, we show the percentile. So the VCO of -66, there's 3.9% of the time, VCO is smaller than minus 66. So obviously, majority of the time it's bigger than minus 66. So keep in mind the gray box is the percentile and is displayed for each of the value. And at the bottom here we have all the 8 futures with the value and the percentile of the distribution. The first chart we have here is the Vixcontango oscillator, which the red line is the Vixcontango oscillator. We showcase the main areas, the yellow area between 0 and 25, and the red area which is below 0. And that is juxtaposed against the XAV. So when you see when the VCO signal is triggered, you see where they trigger a buy and sell on the XAV curve here. The next chart is the VIX terminal oscillator against the XAV. Again, in red you see the VTRO, and then in blue you see the XAV. And then here you get to see the main ranges between 0 and 25, between 0 and 50, 50 and above. 0 to minus 50 is the red, and below minus 50 is really, really red. The next chart shows the V ratio against the SPY, the S&P 500 ETF. In purple is the SPY, and in green is the V ratio, along with the main threshold here of 1.1 and 0. So you get to see how if V ratio starts to go below 1.1, the SPY tends to experience a sell-off, and if it goes above 1.1, the SPY tends to be relatively healthy. The next chart is the VIX versus the VXXT. In red is the VXXT, in blue is the VIX. You get to see how they move along with each other, and we have 3 of the thresholds displayed here: 20, 16, and 10. And the yellow line is the 50-day moving average of the VIX. The next chart is the volatility of volatility. So this plots the VVIX against the VIX of the historical volatility. The blue line is the VVIX, and the purple line is the VHV, along with key threshold levels, 80 level, 100 level, and 120 level. The next chart, we look at historical volatility and compare it against the expected volatility. So in this case, VXXT is compared against HV5. VXXT is in red, HV5 is in yellow, along with key levels of 10, 16, and 10. And the next chart compares the VIX, the 1 month, against the HV20, which is the 1 month actual versus the 1 month expected. The blue line is the VIX, and the purple line is the HV20. On this chart, we also display the key levels of 10, 16, and 20. The next chart is the VIX daily return. So we plot here the daily return of the VIX for the last month. Then the next chart is the night travel of the S&P 500. So this is the percentage of how much did the S&P 500 travel at night between the par close and the open, and how much traveled during the day between the open and the close. And usually high levels of the night travel means that the market is moving. Most of the pricing is happening overnight, and that means that the market is really stressed. When the night travel declines, usually the market is in more solid footing. The next chart is a list of the major contango and backwardation streaks. So these are the top contango streaks of all time since 2004, and these are the top backwardation streaks. Since 2004, we are in the middle of the 5th longest one right now. The next chart displays the contango row, which is a combination of the contango and the row yield. In the dark purple, you get to see the contango, and in a lighter blue, you get to see the row yield, along with key levels of 10% and minus 10%. The next chart, we get to see contango plotted for the entire year, along with key levels of 5% and minus 5%. Then we have row yield, again with key levels of 5% and minus 5%. V ratio chart for the entire year, along with the 10-day moving average, along with the key level of 1.1. Then we show the V-force with um, with the key level of minus 20% plotted. Then we get to see the volatility risk premium, the VRP, for the entire year, along with the 5-day moving average, and the key level of 10. After that, we have a chart about V delta for the entire year with key levels of 2 and minus 2. We have PCR, the put-call ratio with key levels of 1.5 and 2.5. Then we have a chart for the VIX ATR with key levels of 3% and 9% displayed for the entire year. And finally, we have a little chart that plots the VCO against the VXX, which shows us the VCO declines, the VXX tends to gain steam. After that, we have some histogram Pareto charts, which shows you the VIX distribution. So, for example, the VIX right now is closed in the 23 bucket. So it shows you 78% of the time the VIX has been below that level, and 22% of the time it has been above that level. So you get to see the distribution of the VIX, of all the VIX values. And in the small number here, you get to see how many times that has happened, and here you get to see the frequency. We have a similar chart for VXXT, for VVIX, for the Vixcontango oscillator, for the VIX terminal oscillator, for the V delta, for contango, for V ratio, for contango roll, for the put call ratio, for the VIX ATR. This is for the XAV itself, the ETN. This is more of a flat distribution. And then we have charts for the front month VIX future, the back month VIX future, the third month future, the fourth month future, the fifth month future, the 6-month future, 7 and 8 month futures. At the bottom of the report, there is a table of all the values. You get to see some of the main spot indices, some of the main volatility analytics in red, and some information about the SPY and the XAV and the drawdown and how it progressed during each trading day. And the last page of this report shows you the VIX spot indices and all the VIX future contracts in one page. When you get the Excel version of this report, this will be in separate tabs. We have created historical reports for the volatility analytics report. So in this case, if you click here and you can select a particular year, for example, if you pick 2011, you get to see most of the main charts of the volatility analytics for that specific year. So in this case, you get to see the VCO chart, V3O chart, V ratio chart. You get to see the VIX, the VVIX, contango, so you can do some analysis from prior years to gain some insight of what is going to happen today by looking at prior years. So all of these charts for the entire year are being displayed here. The next main report is the Market Technicals report. In it, we show you information about the S&P 500. So here we have some information about the max SPY, the drawdown from the all-time high and how long it was. You get to see the earnings picture. So these are the earnings per share, the GAAP one, and then the adjusted ones, the non-GAAP ones. And then we get to see the P, the GAAP P and the non-GAAP P. We also get to see some information about the net flow from the SPY ETF. So in this case, $8 billion was withdrawn during the last 1 week, which was about 5.2% of the AUM. And this is the ranking amongst all ETFs. So this is the ETF out of 68 ETF. This is the one that had the most withdrawals, and the 64 based on percentage of AUM. Then we get to see a chart about how the SPY compares to some major asset classes. So we have a comparison. This is the correlation against bonds, against gold, against real estate. These are essentially risk on, risk off. So when stocks are losing out to bonds, gold, and real estate, we're in a risk-off environment. And when they are leading it, we're in a risk-on environment. In this case, we're in a risk-off environment. Then we also have comparison against emerging markets, against developed markets, against small caps, and against the short volatility ETF itself. The next chart showcases key levels for the S&P 500, key technical levels. Here we show the all-time peak, and at the bottom is the latest valley, major valley that we have encountered. The yellow line is the SPX itself. We showcase the 1% draw from the all-time high, the 2%, 3%, 5%, 7%, and 10% draw. Those are in red. In green, you get to see rally points from the valley. So 1% rally, 3%, 5, 7, and 10% rally. That's usually where things would top out. And then we have some moving averages. We have the 200-day moving average, the 50-day moving average, the 100-day moving average, the 30-day moving average, and the 10-day moving average. So based on these key technical levels, you get to see areas where the price will hit resistance or support. The next chart is a daily chart of the SPX, where we put major trend lines and major support and resistance levels based on the chart. So this chart would have the major moving averages, a fan of the major moving averages, along with major trend lines that usually connect the most recent or the most major lower highs or higher lows. So in this case, you get to see the major, and you get to see the major resistance and support levels as we have determined them based on historical action. This chart gets updated once a day. The next chart, you get to see the S&P 500 valuation stripes. So these are based on the gap earnings per share. We calculate all the P levels. So we calculate P16 would correspond to 1459. We have P17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So you get to see exactly in which P band is the SPX currently trading. The SPX valuation bias looks back in time. So this chart, the chart above, just deals with the earnings as of right now, as of the last trading day. The SPX valuation bands looks at the earnings in the past, so you get to see when the SPX was getting really overheated and when it's getting to be cheap. So in this case, it's kind of a neutral valuation around a 19 to 20 gap PE. We show the SPX trailing 12 months earning evolution. So these are we take all the earnings from the S&P 500 and every week, and then we keep them in a database in order to monitor progress of the earnings. So in a purple line, you get to see the GAP's earnings per share for the last trailing 12 months. And then in the blue line is the operating earnings per share, or the non-GAAP. Usually they're higher than the GAAP. And similarly, we get to see the GAAP P in which stocks are trading, and the non-GAAP P in light blue. In the next chart, we get to look at the earnings evolution by quarter. So we usually show you what the next quarter's expectations are. So in this case, we are right now in the first quarter, and companies are reporting fourth-quarter earnings. So we get to see what the Q1 expectations are, how are declining over time. So this is the 12-month EPS, and this is just for the quarter, how the EPS has moved. We get to see the current quarter reported earnings, again, based on a trailing 12-month estimate, and also just the quarterly estimate. So in this case, the quarterly earnings were expected to be 36 at the very beginning in 2014, in March 2014, and they have been declining slowly over time until they hit now 23. And then we get to see the prior quarter trailing 12-month EPS and quarterly EPS as well. The next chart does rally analysis. So in this case, we get to see how much the SPX has rallied over the prior peak. So in this case, it's been a while since we've rallied. We've been in a drawdown for most of the times and currently about 11% drawdown. The rally from prior valley takes the valley indicator that we calculate, so the lowest level that has been reached in the last wave, and then since we started rallying, it shows you how much we have rallied. So in this case, we haven't really had a major rally. We've reached a new low, and then we have rallied about 3% off of that. The next chart shows you the rally streaks ranked from all time. So they're ranked here by magnitude of the rally streaks, and then you can get to see how many days they took. The next chart gives you a drawdown analysis of the SPX. So what is the drawdown from all-time high along with key levels? 1%, 3%, 5% drawdown, 7% drawdown, and 10% drawdown. The next chart shows you how big the SPX drawdown is. So in this case, we're marred in the third worst drawdown since the bull market of 2009. And this tells you how long the drawdown is, and if there's a rally inside of the drawdown, it shows you how long that rally is, how long that rip is. And finally, we have a drawdown from bull market high of the XAV. So in this case, the XAV is down 63% from the all-time high. We have a fund flow analysis chart. We get the fund flow of the SPY ETF, and then we plot them here, so you get to see what the net flow is for each week in blue and red bars if it's negative, blue if it's positive, and then with the purple we get to see the cumulative flow, so whether they accumulate positively or negatively. In this case, they've been kind of sitting flat for a while. Next up, we have some more earnings charts here. Again, this is a bigger view of the earnings evolution chart. It shows you the GAAP earnings per share and the operating earnings per share for a longer period of time here. So you get a longer period to look at and see how earnings have been declining here for a while. You also get to see the GAAP P versus the operating P. You get to see how the P has been increasing over time and has sharply come down over the past month. And then you also get to see the operating P here. Then we have some charts that show you these are the S&P 500 quarterly earnings. So this is the amount for each quarter. And in dark, you get to see the actual earnings, and in purple, what the expected earnings are. So you get to see here, we expect a rapid pickup of earnings in the future, which may or may not happen. Then we have the operating quarterly earnings. Again, they are in dark, you get to see the actual, in light, you get to see the expected, and in orange, you get to see the current earnings. Then we have trailing 12-month earnings, again, for each quarter. So these are the actual, this is the current, and this is the expected. And similarly, we have trailing 12-month operating earnings of the SPX. These are the actuals, these are the current, and these are the expected. And finally, we have growth rates. This is earnings growth on a quarterly basis compared to the last year quarter. So in this case, earnings in the fourth quarter of 2015 have grown 2.2% over the fourth quarter of 2014. And then we have adjusted operating earnings, quarterly earnings growth. So in this case, adjusted earnings are down slightly, minus 0.3%. We also do growth comparison based on trailing 12-month estimates. So in this case, trailing 12-month earnings are down 10% from the last year quarter, fourth quarter, and we also have operating trailing 12-month earnings growth as well. So in this case, trailing 12-month operating earnings are down almost minus 8% from the fourth quarter of 2014. The next report is volatility streaks, in which we plot major volatility streaks. So at the very top here, we have a summary of all the volatility streaks. So for example, VCO less than minus 25 has currently, this streak is currently 24 trading days, and this is the fourth longest of all time. we have a long backwardation streak, which is also 24 trading days, and this is the fixed of all time. So you get to see a summary of all the major streak ordered by all-time rank. Then we get to see charts which show you all of the major streaks above 20 days in this case, and what the max value of the contango was in this case. So this is a contango streak. This is a backwardation streak. Again, this shows you currently we're in a 24-day backwardation streak, and the minimum backwardation value was minus 8.7%. We have a VCO smaller than zero streaks, VIX bigger than average streaks, VIX smaller than average streaks, V-force or VIX bigger than a 50-day moving average, V-force bigger than zero streaks, V-force smaller than zero streak, VVIX bigger than 120 streak, VVIX bigger than 100 streak, VVIX smaller than 80, V-ratio bigger than 1.1, V-ratio smaller than 1, and then a VIX daily return streak. VIX daily return bigger than 0, VIX daily return smaller than 0, VCO less than minus 25, VIX bigger than the 10-day moving average, and VIX smaller than the 10-day moving average. The next report is the annual summary report. In this report, we have a number of tables. The main table here shows you the annual averages for the VIX, for the contango, for the row yield, for the VCO, for the VVIX, for the VATR, and the night travel on the SPY, along with the annual return of the SPY, the XAV, and the VXX. So we have those for all the time periods since VIX futures market started trading in 2004. The next we have year-to-date averages for all of these parameters for the VIX, contango, row yield, VCO, as well as the year-to-date return. And we also have the performance from this date to the end of the year. So for prior years, we calculate date to the year-end averages and the returns. We have a table for we have a number of tables for monthly averages. So this is a table for the monthly average of the VIX going back to 1990 when the VIX was started. We have averages for contango going back to 2004, 5-year averages and the overall monthly averages for each month, and then these are the averages for each individual month in each individual year. We have the returns for the SPY going all the way back to 1993 when the SPY was started. We have a table of averages for the VCO back to 2004. We have a table for contango row again back to 2004, row yield. We have the returns of the XAV for each month all the way to its inception in 2010. We have a table for the VIX ATR for each month. We have a table for the SPY night travel, again all the way down to 1993 when the SPY was incepted. And we have a table with annual averages for the SPY night travel, so you get to see the day percentage and the night percentage, the day travel and the night travel in terms of points, the day percentage and the night percentage. Then we have a number of charts. This is the VIX monthly average for the last 12 months. We have the SPY return by month for the last 12 months, the VCO monthly average for the last 12 months, the XAV return for the last 12 months, the contango monthly average for the last 10 months, the contango row monthly average for the last 10 months, the VIX ATR monthly average for the last 12 months, and the SPY night travel monthly average for the last 12 months. The next report we're going to cover are the monthly seasonals report. So we have a report for the current month, for the next month, and for the prior month. In that report, at the top you see a summary of what the minimum and maximum VCO was during that month, the 10th percentile, the 19th percentile, and the average, and also the actual in this February so far. And We have a chart of the XAV daily return trends. So the red line is the average historical monthly return of the XAV throughout the month. We have the daily historical average for each trading day of the month. And then in purple is the actual daily return for this February. And the purple line is the actual monthly return to date for the XAV. We have a similar chart for the S&P 500 for the SPX. The red line is the average historical monthly return for the SPX for each day of the week. In the blue bar is the historical daily average return. The purple bar is the actual daily return this February, and the purple line is the actual month-to-date return of the XPX. Then we have a chart about the VCO, about the Vixcontango oscillator, which shows you the 80% range throughout the month. The blue line is the historical daily average for that month. And in purple is the actual this month. So for example, this month, the VCO is near the bottom of the 80% range. We have a similar chart for Contango, the 80% range, the average historical daily average for Contango, and the purple line is the actual for this February. And finally, we have a VIX daily trend return chart. This shows you the 80% range. And blue line is the average VIX, and the purple is the actual VIX during the month. So in this case, it's moving above average. And finally, the final part of the Vixcontango Plus subscription is historical data. There is two spreadsheets that we provide. The first one is volatility data and analytics, and the second one is VIX futures. The historical volatility data and analytics spreadsheet contains each day, each date, and then what the CBOE volatility indexes are, the VIX futures from the 1st to the 8th future, the continuous contract of the futures, then we calculate the historical volatility for each day, and then all the volatility analytics are in the spreadsheet. Along with that, we have the VCO and the VTRL signals when they trigger. We have the SPX, the daily change, the daily percentage change, the drawdown from all-time high, and then the 10-day moving average, 20-day moving average, 30-day moving average, 50 and 100 and 200 moving average. And we have similar information for the XAV and for the VXX.